Okay, wonderful. I do see people still logging on, which is wonderful. So welcome. Thank you for joining us for our women's wellness event today. I'm Bobbi Hamilton. I'm the creator of Chi Universe. I've just designed a yoga mat and game system to provide yoga and movement therapy for kids and families and moms and dads, and to be able to experience fitness and wellness with your children. Today, I'm also going to introduce Elisabeth Cardiello, who is the founder of Brave and Cafe Unimatic. So she's going to share with us today her system on how to have brave conversations, which I'm really excited about because I feel as women, oftentimes we hold our tongue or we don't stick up for ourselves, or we're too scared to ask for what we want, right? And this is a really big deal in helping us get ahead. We are going to learn hormone balancing through nutrition with Madeleine Wisecup from The Wise Consumer. And she is so full of knowledge, so I'm really excited to give her the floor today as well. But to get started, I am going to take us on a little bit of a journey just so we can all feel present today, really drop into our bodies and feel well. Trying to figure out how to pin myself for a second. Here we go, and then I'll release the pin. Okay, here I'm in New York City today, so if you hear sirens, please ignore them. Use it as a way to just test yourself to be more present with yourself, okay? So first what we're going to do is we're going to grab onto our knees since we're sitting at our desk. So I want everybody to grab onto their knees, okay? Pull yourself up tall, draw your shoulders down. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can see me. And we're going to take the heart and we're going to lift it up and forward on the inhale. So we're going to go inhale, lift, shoulders down the back. And then we're going to go exhale, round, chin comes to the chest. Exhale, exhale, exhale. And inhale, lift. And exhale, chin to chest. Exhale, exhale, exhale. And last one, inhale, lift, slide the shoulders down, breathe in, breathe in. And exhale, round, chin to chest. Exhale, exhale. Good, just stay with the breath, inhaling and exhaling. We're just tuning into ourselves right now. And for the next breath and the next practice, what I want you to do is breathe in, feel the breath come up to the third eye. And I want you to highlight the third eye with a bright white light. So breathing in, highlighting, brightening the brain, feel the brain be engulfed in a white light, recharging our mental center. And as you exhale, I want you to exhale everything out. So exhale, exhale, exhale. And then when you breathe in, I want you to notice how you're breathing in the life force energy. So sip in the life force into the body. And when you exhale, exhale deeply, deeply. So when you breathe in next, you feel that sense of drinking in your life force. So let's stay with that together for 3 breaths at your own time. And just make sure you fully exhale completely so that when you breathe in, you pull in the life force deeply into the body, nourishing your whole self with the life force in the breath. And I'm just going to be quiet for a second so you can tune into your breath. One more really good cycle of breath. Good. And now one more deep breath, and I want you to breathe in as deeply as you can. Keep breathing in to the point where you feel like you're going to pop. So you push your lungs wider into your heart points, to your heart center points, widening through the chest. Breathe in, push the energy down into the sacrum, widen, breathe into the lower lung, middle lung, upper lung. Feel as if you're gonna pop. Keep breathing in, breathing in, breathing in. And when you absolutely can't breathe in, exhale, release everything out. Let it go. Everything releases. We are no longer holding on to anything at this point, and we're dropping into a present state, a time for you to nourish yourself, to learn and absorb, and to just be present, to be able to learn these principles in order to advance yourself in your life, physically and mentally. One more breath together. Breathe in like you're going to pop. Breathe in, breathe in. Keep breathing in. Expand into the lower lung. Expand into the upper lung. Keep breathing in, breathe in, breathe in. And exhale everything out, just letting it go, not holding on to anything, allowing yourself to be completely free. Just even for a few minutes, you have no responsibilities but to be present for yourself. Okay, one more breath as we breathe in, seeing the forehead charge and recharge, brightening the brain with a bright white light. This time, bring that white light into the heart center. Feel the heart center expand. See the light expand from the heart. Good. And just taking 2 to 3 more breaths, brightening, recharging the brain, recharging the heart center, and feeling the heart and mind connect into one evolving, brightening light. Good. One more deep, bright, white, light breath. Feeling it recharge the heart and mind, recharging body. Good. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay. So, we wanted to just take this time to really support women. We are advancing in our careers, in our life, in every way. We want to support everybody in our development as women and in our own personal knowledge. And if you want to share at any time, or if you have any questions, please go ahead and write them in the text box. So I am going to introduce Madeleine Wisecup first. She's such a wealth of knowledge. She is going to give us some pointers on how to eat well, some recipe ideas on how to, sync our periods, sync our lives, and to just give us some really good ideas on the type of nutrition that we need as women in our cycle and in our life. And with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Madeleine, and I'm going to unpin myself. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you, Madeleine, for taking the time to give us this amazing information.
Oh my gosh, you guys, this is like my favorite topic. Are you kidding? We're going to talk about your period. I don't even know you guys. And I'm like, let's talk about your bleed. It's such a random, weird topic to talk about, considering I don't know any of you, but the reality is this is impacting all of us, whether you're entering perimenopause, if you're listening to this later on and you're not menstruating all the time, or you're entering puberty. I'm assuming everyone here is menstruating. It's a part of being a woman. It's so empowering, I think, to understand how our cycles, how our hormones impact our brain, our mood, our energy levels, our our libido, right? So really quickly, so yes, hello, welcome everyone. I think this is such a great opportunity to get together and chat. Bobbi, thank you so much for hosting us. I want to quickly, I don't have much time, so we're not going to go over the whole endocrine system biology. This is like biology, menstrual cycle 101, okay? But I do want to introduce myself really quickly, kind of tell you how I got here. So I'm the host and the producer of the Wise Consumer podcast, which originally and still is about conscious living. What you're putting in your skin, what you're putting in your body, how does it impact your life? How does it impact our planet, right? Which I'm super passionate about. But unfortunately, about 2 years ago, I suffered a miscarriage. And this was really challenging. I definitely ignored it for a while, but what I realized, it was also a very transformative time, because when I experienced my miscarriage, my doctor and my sister Sarah here had said, go get your hormone levels checked. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And I did. And my doctor had told me your progesterone levels are really low. So could be why, you experience a miscarriage, could be a whole bunch of other reasons. But to be honest, I was like, I don't really know what my progesterone is. I don't even know what does that mean? My progesterone levels are low. And I think that's the reality for a lot of women today. Hopefully having conversations like this, it's shifting that dialogue so that you can go in and be like, hey, I think something's wrong. My period is really short, or my period cycle is really long. But I didn't know that. So I guess my first question for you is, my sister's not allowed to respond to this. Does anyone know, can you tell me what your 4 phases of your menstrual cycle are? And can you tell me what your 3 main reproductive hormones are? And it's okay if you don't.
I think the hormones are FSH, progesterone, and then it's not AMH. AMH is more the reserves. I think I'm confusing the third one.
Yep, close. Yeah, FSH and progesterone, definitely. I will say, so your main 3, we're going to talk about the main 3, because yes, we could talk about FSH and LH. Those are also very incredibly important hormones to help get our ovulation and our eggs matured, to open our corpus luteum, which I'll talk about. But really the reality, what I want to focus on today, just to keep things simple so you can walk away with knowledge and not just like your brain exploding from biology, is progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So those are the 3 main hormones, and all 3 of them are just wonderful in their own way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, and does anyone know what your menstrual phases are, the 4 phases throughout the month? Okay, if you don't, that's perfect. We're going to talk about why you should, because when you walk away from this today, hopefully you'll be able to implement and understand. So you have 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. Oftentimes when we think about our period, we're like, oh, my period bleed. That's my menstrual cycle. It's actually not. It's the whole weeks leading up to your bleed. These are really important. And if you can support that, and if you understand what's happening, that's when you can empower yourself by like shifting the way you're scheduling your meetings. If you're an entrepreneur, or you're, as a student, you can't necessarily tell your teacher or your professor, I actually can't do the final because I'm going to be in my luteal phase and that's just not going to work for me. You can't do that, but you can support your hormones so that you can actually show up and be more empowered and present. So let's talk about the 4 phases. You have follicular, then you have ovulation, luteal, and then menstrual. I think menstrual and ovulation, most of us are familiar with. Follicular and ovulation kind of go hand in hand. This is when your estrogen levels are going to be on the rise. And estrogen is the main female hormone. This one is important. When it comes to the menstrual cycle, estrogen is going to thicken the lining of your uterus. It's also going to help your egg mature. I love estrogen. I wish I could have a really, really long follicular phase, because this is when you have energy, you're social, you're alert. This is when, ladies, we should be scheduling our meetings, if you have a big to-do, you should be doing it during your follicular phase. That includes both ovulation and follicular. You're going to have high energy. You're going to want to run that marathon. You're just going to be really alert. Ovulation, estrogen dips just a little bit. Testosterone rises. Hello, libido, right? This is like, hey, I want my baby. Give me the baby. And then that dips. Estrogen will slowly go up again. During your luteal phase, it'll balance out. Progesterone is going to increase during your luteal phase. Progesterone, what does progesterone do? Progesterone, in terms of your menstrual cycle, is the hormone that's really going to thicken your uterus lining. Endometrium is also called, so that if there is a potential fertilized egg, it has like a nourishing place to cuddle in and implant, right? So those are also, progesterone is a wonderful hormone, but this is when you tend to be a little bit calmer. This is when you're going to want to maybe do that art project or do the journaling, do something a little bit more calming for yourself, especially as your estrogen and progesterone levels during this phase are going to drop. And when they drop, if there's no implantation, no egg fertilized, that's when you have your bleed. And that's normally a healthy bleed is 3 to 7 days. It depends. If you've had a bleed for like 8 days, it's always been 8 days since you started menstruating, maybe that's normal for you. It's just so versatile depending on the woman and or the individual menstruating, what a regular cycle or a period is, I should say. I just want to mention here really quickly, a few signs of an abnormal period is a period that is very irregular, a period that's inconsistent, a period that is really heavy bleeding with clotting, dark purple, you're going through pads, tampons, menstrual cups every hour. You're vomiting, you have extreme pain. That is an indicator that something may be wrong. And actually the American what is it called? Obstetrician and gynecologists. I have the name wrong, but ACOG basically is saying we should actually consider our menstrual cycle as a vital sign or vital sign. Like we should be measuring it along with pulse, heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature. Oh, menstrual cycle, because if you're bleeding a lot, if your period is inconsistent, it could be a sign that hormones are off. And that, as women, it impacts everything. As I mentioned, it impacts your brain, it impacts your metabolism, all of the above, your skin, if you're breaking out. So it's just really important if you think there's something wrong to speak to your healthcare provider. So I wanted to just mention that. Yeah.
I wanted to just say one quick thing for the new people who've jumped on here.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn it back over to you. A lot of women have been experiencing inconsistencies lately, and some of it is linked to vaccination of themselves or their partners. And, it's something that we're experiencing as women across the board of all ages. And that's also why this is so important to try and nourish yourself in the right way in order to try and come back into balance. So I just wanted to say that, like, a lot of women are really going through this, and you're not alone if you're experiencing it. And more reason to tune into this stuff to try and bring yourself back into balance. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100%, I think that is a good way for you to understand what is going on. If all of a sudden you're inconsistent in your period, right? I would really highly recommend, if the takeaway for today, start tracking your period, your menstrual cycle, if you aren't already. So you can check that out. So I briefly explored here the four phases of your menstrual cycle, but let's talk about my favorite thing, which is food. That's the other thing I should share. I'm French American, so my appetite is always leading my passions. All right. I'm always going to be talking about food. Something my family, we just grew up. It's really important. And that's one of the ways, like, how can I bring food into my hormone healing? It's a fun way to try to use lifestyle instead of reverting to birth control or other forms first and foremost. Just caveat there, if you do need to do additional supplementation with progesterone. I have done that when I was pregnant. I did additional supplementation progesterone. If you need to take birth control, as I mentioned, because you're extremely in pain and you just can't function without it. Also, I'm not judging, there's never a judgment, but I always think it's important to start with lifestyle and diet changes first, if you can. So what happens during each of these phases to our metabolism? Well, estrogen is known, research is finding, to be a appetite suppressor, and your metabolism slows down. So this is a time of your cycle, and that again consists of your follicular and ovulation. And so what does that mean? That means that during this portion of your cycle, you can eat lighter. You could eat raw veggies, raw fruit, smoothies, salads. This is a time where some women, not myself, because I'm hypoglycemic and I become a monster if I don't eat, but some women are like, oh, I forgot to eat. Like, oh my goodness. Well, if that's the case, then you want to be eating lighter. And it's okay. Just kind of go with the flow. You do want to, in the follicular, not ovulation, in the follicular, because estrogen is slowly on the rise, you can add and include phytoestrogens. And these are plant compounds that mimic estrogen. So these are your tempeh, your miso, your flax seeds. These are really great. Another really good thing to include during your follicular phase are gut healthy foods. And I'm talking like your probiotics. So your sauerkraut, your kimchi, your tempeh, your yogurts. These are great things. The gut and hormones are super interconnected. We're not going to get into the science of that, but there's an estrobolome, which is basically part of your gut, bacteria in your gut that helps to metabolize the estrogen. So it's really great to support your gut throughout the whole cycle. Basically, anything I'm sharing too, by the way, here, there's not like, oh, I can only eat raw vegetables in the first half and not in the second. Absolutely not. You should be eating whole foods and healthy. But if you know this about yourself, if you know, like, my estrogen is on the rise, I may not be as hungry, so I can nourish myself with lighter foods, with vegetables. This will be a good place to start. Second phase of your cycle. Oh, and then during ovulation, you want to be flushing out estrogen. So you don't want to necessarily be consuming foods that are going to mimic estrogen throughout your ovulation phase. You want to flush out the estrogen so you don't have excess estrogen, because you don't want an estrogen progesterone imbalance either. So that's when you're going to include more fiber rich foods throughout all of it, but really to flush out that excess estrogen. Then we enter our luteal phase, and that's when we have progesterone. Progesterone is going to stop some women up. All right. So we may have some BM issues. So it's really important during this phase to eat a lot of, again, fiber rich foods to move us, to keep us moving, to get rid of all of the things. Also during this phase, because our hormones are going to dip, it impacts our brain. This is why, like, how many of us have been tired right before our period, and we're just so tired, you're sluggish, you feel foggy in your brain. I'm there right now. I'm surprised that I'm actually verbalizing what I'm saying right now. But you want to support this by eating complex carbs, because complex carbs boost serotonin, which is a mood enhancing chemicals, right? So it's going to help. So you want to not have, we're going to want to crave, we're going to want to eat like the pizzas and the chips and the ice cream, that's the like, oh, I'm going to have my period, eat the ice cream. That's like the running joke for women, right? But the reality is we probably want to supplement that more with complex carbs so that it does support it. We don't get a jump in sugar and then a crash. We want to keep our blood sugar stable, blood sugar getting glucose to the brain transmitting. It's going to keep you stable, going to help you keep functioning, so that if you do have an exam or a presentation during this phase, you can actually somewhat function and get through it. And then you enter your menstrual phase, right? And the menstrual phase is where we shed the lining. So we're losing nutrients, we're losing minerals. And this is one where you want to really nourish your body with, I hate saying this, and I know many people don't enjoy this, but one of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet, ladies, is liver. You don't need a lot. You need like 3 ounces a week of liver, or salmon, or sardines, or seaweed. Again, I know a lot of these are not necessarily vegan friendly, and I was vegan for a while, so it's hard, but I will say we do want to be supplementing our diet. I am not an advocate for veganism in terms of my own personal health, because I did experience I struggled with that. Because I was low progesterone, and B6 is one of the vitamins that you really want. You want to get your B vitamins, because B6 helps to increase, it supports your corpus luteum, and that helps to secrete progesterone. So I was low in progesterone, so I had to reintroduce animal products. Now you can work with your healthcare provider if you are vegan or vegetarian to see, am I low in certain minerals or certain nutrients? Should I be supplementing with, a fish oil or with a multivitamin, et cetera? Am I going too fast? I'm realizing that I'm like spieling it out for you guys. Are there any questions before I continue? Nope.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Great. You're doing awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
And anybody can, if you do have questions for her, go ahead and pop them in a chat box. Okay, perfect. Looks like we might have one in there. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm currently breastfeeding. I just had a baby just almost a year. But I am breastfeeding, speaking of hormones, and my cycle is still very irregular. But I can tell you, because I understand how my body, once you become aware of what's happening, I can feel right now, okay, my estrogen levels are dropping. So is my progesterone. I'm really foggy in the brain. I have no idea how I'm communicating effectively right now. Must be because of my complex carbs. Obviously, this is like keeping it really very, very 101 for you guys. There's a lot of science that goes into it, and our body is just, it is fascinating. So when we start to get hard on ourselves, I just want you to remind yourself, like, there's so much happening inside your body right now. Like, your heart is pumping, your brain is telling your pituitary gland, depending on where you are in your cycle, to release an FSH, your follicle stimulating hormone, to go ahead and tell the follicle to secrete estrogen. Like, that is happening every month and you're not even thinking about it. Like, it's just happening. These are so important. And it's just, I think if it gets to a point where you're just being hard on yourself, you don't want to necessarily change diet, et cetera, I understand. But it is just so beautiful to be able to support yourself through these changes. An easy way to think about, going back to your 4 phases, one of the ways that I really like to break it out is thinking about your 4 phases as the seasons, right? So you have your follicular and ovulation. Those would be considered, like I said, you're eating light, estrogen is on the mood, it's bright, it's fresh. These are spring and summer. These are like, you're just, and those are like, that's it. That's spring and summer, the end. And then you go into the next 2 phases, and that's your luteal and your menstrual. And those are, you could say, autumn and menstrual and winter. And that's when you want to eat, follicular, you're eating light, fresh. And then second part, luteal, you're eating warming soups, etc. 3 minerals and 3 nutrients that I really want you to be aware of are magnesium, omega, and vitamin B. So I already talked about vitamin B's a little bit. Animal products are your most efficient source of vitamin B. You can supplement, obviously. Magnesium, yes, Bobbi. Magnesium and yep. Okay, Bobbi's just writing what I said. Magnesium is kind of, if you think about it, like your magic mineral. It is going to help with anxiety. It's going to help with the creation of hormones. It's going to help with balancing. It's just such sleep. It helps with sleep. And most of us are deficient in magnesium. And we need to get it from diet. So a way you could get magnesium: dark leafy greens, again, sunflower seeds, most whole foods, salmon. Those are great sources of chocolate, dark chocolate, 75 and above chocolate, great source of magnesium. Yeah. Omega, I'm not going to go into too much here because I just did a podcast episode on it, but omega, the reality is we're consuming too much omega-6. And so we need these omega-6s, these fatty acids, but we're having too many omega-6s, not enough omega-3s, omega-3s being like your fatty fish. And omega-3 has been found to help reduce inflammation, especially for women. They did studies and they found that women who have high levels of prostaglandins tend to consume too many omega-6s. Our ratio is supposed to be like a 4-to-1 or a 1-to-1. Anthropologists think, like, in the evolutionarily speaking, we were programmed to be a 1-to-1, 1 omega to 1 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. But unfortunately, studies are finding that Western diet, we're about a 20-to-1. So 20 omega-6 to a ratio of 1 omega-3. So of course, we're going to have inflammation, chronic inflammation when it comes to things like that. And that impacts so much: diabetes, heart, etc. So try to be adding fish to your diet, or fatty acids to your diet from omega-3s 2 to 3 times a week if you can. And if you can't get that, then supplement with a fish supplement. And I talk about this with Ayla Barmer, the founder of Full Well Fertility, who just released her own fish oil. Nordic Nature, I believe, is another one that I really like for fish oil. If you just aren't into fishy things, but you want to get that omega-3, that's a really good recommendation. And Ayla talks about this, and she's a registered dietitian, she just does a great job explaining the impact of it. And then lastly, the vitamin Bs, those are just going to be really good. They help to also support your hormones and development. Any questions?
Okay, I just wanted to ask you really quickly, because I know a lot of people are vegan and vegetarian. Can you get omega-3s from the algae oil instead of fish oil? Is that something you'd recommend?
Yeah, you can. And again, I have to preface, I don't recommend anything because I'm not a nutritionist. But I did ask Ayla that question. I have done research on it, and you can. It's just not as efficient, but you can. And there are some very good sources of algae if you are a vegan or vegetarian to get it that way. If you're not into taking a fish oil supplement.
Okay. Okay, great. And then I just want to say, this is so helpful and so wonderful. If anybody wants to add any other questions, and also maybe like 2 to 3 more minutes, and or 2 to 5 minutes, and then we'll pick up with Elizabeth.
Yeah, no, this is, yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free. I will say that I'm releasing a cookbook, in January, which will have all this information broken down. And then what I'm doing right now is I'm creating recipes, because I think oftentimes we hear all this information, we know all this knowledge, but it's like, you know, you could get a book that tells you, here are the ingredients, like here's a list of foods you should add to your diet. But I don't know about you guys, but I feel like you're tired by the end of the day. You're like, okay, you open the fridge and you're like, what am I going to eat? Okay, I have maybe like half an avocado and a slice of pizza or whatever. And I think if you can create a meal plan, and if you can use recipes created by someone such as myself who loves food and loves hormones and can take the information I have, and I am working with a registered registered nutritionist on this, and they just have it laid out for you, it just becomes much easier. So those are just a few little takeaways there. That pretty much sums up what I wanted to kind of introduce us to today, because without going down into the rabbit hole of, you know, all the science behind it, you know, as Jennifer had mentioned, your FSH and your LH. And if you do, so your luteal phase, I think it's Janet or Janeth. Your luteal phase is when your progesterone is on the rise. So you want to be eating a lot of fiber-rich foods, because as I mentioned, but you weren't there, progesterone slows you down. And one of the reasons during progesterone, I don't know if I mentioned this, you research has found we end up burning about 80 to 250 more calories per day during our luteal phase, right? Which most of us are like, that's amazing, I'm just burning calories and not even having to do anything. Yes. But the reality is, it's actually our bodies being like, you're burning through more calories, but you're also, your appetite, your cravings are increasing, because it's your body's way of saying, hey, there may be potential fertilization. Let's go ahead and get the body ready to feed the potential egg that's going to be fertilized. So even though we're burning more, we're also consuming more, or we should be consuming more. So that's a one way. And then during that phase as well, you want to be eating soups and stews and cooked foods and warming. This is like the warming time. This is a time to be introspective and eating warming foods.
What are 3 fiber-rich foods?
Dark leafy greens. What else? I mean, sauerkraut, basically any vegetable with a nice, I love bone broth. Bone broth is really, really good to answer that question. So yeah, I do have a list of foods here for you guys. And for anyone who would like, I can send a few notes just so you have it. It's, I'm creating a freebie anyways to share on the thing. Beets. Oh, beets are so great, by the way. So for instance, during your follicular ovulation phase, I love making a shredded beet salad. Super simple. Peel the beet, put it in a blender, top it with some vinaigrette, right? It's so good. During your luteal follicular phase, though, you might want to consider boiling the beet and then putting it in a salad, or putting it in a, what is that Russian soup called? Does anyone remember what that
Borscht.
Borscht. Yes, in a borscht, which, that's awesome. Same with onion. Onion is it's great for your immune system. You can make an onion soup during this phase. I'm actually finalizing an onion soup that's dairy-free and butter-free right now, because I love onion soup, but as a French person, of course, but it's really, I mean, you add a lot of butter and flour, and a lot of people have told me they're gluten-free or they're dairy-free. So I'm finalizing that recipe this week, actually. Also, let's diversify our grains, right? So when we're talking about grains, oftentimes we think wild rice, brown rice, white rice, quinoa, but oh my goodness, there's so many whole grains we could be adding. Amaranth, teff. These are ancient grains that we've been eating throughout generations, and yet just now are starting. Farro from Africa, right? So just so you can really diversify your diet by adding different foods, so you're not eating the same thing every single week of every month. I think that's just a really important thing for me, is to diversify my diet. So when you're talking about fibers, dark leafy greens, beets, amaranth, quinoa, etc.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was so
Yeah.
helpful. I love the part where you're saying, oh, make a fresh beet salad, earlier in your cycle as compared to like a boiled beet later on. So I will be happy. I want your recipes and your book so badly. So I will just, if anybody follows me, I'll definitely let you know when that goes live. And feel free to follow The Wise Consumer with Madeleine. Thank you so much for your knowledge.
Yeah.
Wow, you're brilliant. Thank you so, so much.
Of course, my pleasure. Oh, and let me just finish by saying this before I hand it to Elisabeth. The whole point behind all of this is if you feel good, then you can do good. Whatever your calling is in life, right? If you're not feeling well, you're not going to be able to achieve it. You're not going to be able to make a difference in our communities. You're not going to be able to make a difference in the world. And that's when things like what Elisabeth is doing is just so, so wonderful. So with that, I will hand it to Elisabeth, who I love.
Thank you. Thank you. I love you back. So I don't know how to follow that. Maddie,
Well,
you're really
maybe
hard
I
to
could give you an introduction because I am so excited to hear what you have to say, Elisabeth. I just want to reiterate that as women, oftentimes we can't speak up for ourselves or ask for what we want. And Elisabeth Cardiello has created an entire system called Brave. And she's gonna share with us the system today. And also, I just want to say she's the founder of Cafe Unimatic, and so she's also an entrepreneur. And how amazing to have another female entrepreneur. But thank you. With that, I just want to hand it over to you, and thank you so much for sharing your Brave system with us.
Thank you. Thank you. So first, I want to invite you guys that are here that we can't see, if it is at all possible, if you're pumping, no worries. But if it is at all possible, I love seeing faces. It is so hard to share and to talk without feedback, right? So if we can see your faces, yes, hi, my dear. I would love to. So, and if not, totally fine. But I just figured I'd invite you. So first I just want to congratulate you for being here, because it's a crazy time of year. There's so much happening, and it's just, we've all been through something challenging the past couple of years, right? I mean, we've been through a pandemic, isolation, we've had to work and homeschool and stay healthy and stay sane. And let's be honest, I'm not sure that any of us are completely okay right now. None of us were ever okay, let's be real. But in the last couple of years, it's actually become okay to say, I'm not okay. Research has actually shown, P.S., Maddie and I are both science dorks, so you probably will hear the term research says a ton of times over the next few minutes too. So the research shows now that women are actually burning out faster than men because we're just doing and shouldering so much, and we need to do something about it. So we need a way to support ourselves and each other. And what the research says about that is that the best thing that we can give to each other if we want to achieve, accomplish, find fulfillment, connection, and thrive is supportive community. So today I'm going to teach you about a research-backed framework that I created called Brave. Like Bobbi said, it's being used by leaders across the globe to create the conditions and the foundation for really meaningful connection, to take the stress out of telling the truth. And the best part is that it can be used around a boardroom table or around your dining room tables. So just a quick intro and background. I'm Liz Cardiello. I've started 3 businesses. One is 10 years old this year. And it's, if you've seen the documentary called Coffee for All on Netflix, you can hear the whole story about my coffee company. Super wild, kind of fun. And my face will be in your living room. I've given a couple TED Talks. I've spoken at UN events, congressional briefings. I'm one of Simon Sinek's top optimist instructors. And now we work with leaders, typically at fast growing startups. I think like 50% or more of our clients are on the 5,000 this year, doing this, teaching them Brave, teaching them how to help their teams and their leaders be braver at work and also at home. So I think, P.S. also important, because this has been so fun to do in teams, in companies. I also now run a 6-week course for individuals, and we just actually wrapped this morning. We just actually wrapped our last one for the year. And the people that come together are so fascinating. We had the chief people officer of the San Francisco 49ers, a college student, a CEO, a stay-at-home dad, and the head of HR for a Vermont credit union. Like super wild, but such an interesting way to just show us that we're all the same. And when we can actually communicate in a way that we can really start to see each other, stuff just gets better. So you get the picture. My whole story is not that important. The one piece of my background that feels really important to share is that when I was growing up, the conversations that my dad and I had at our table over coffee were specific in a way that I didn't quite understand then. They helped me discover the very thing we'll be talking about today, and it's why this is so very close to my heart. So vulnerable share. My dad passed away when I was 26, and my whole life he had aortic aneurysms, heart attacks, high blood pressure, you name it. So from the time I was 5 and 6 years old, I was hyper aware of stress and our nervous system and what that does to us. And it was interesting because when his blood pressure would skyrocket, I swear there's a point to this, when his blood pressure would skyrocket, they'd call me over and I'd have a conversation with him. And I was able, just by the way that I had a conversation with him, to bring his blood pressure down. So in my house, the running joke was that I was his unicorn, and I totally loved that. What I didn't realize was that there was actually science behind what I was doing. It's called co-regulation. And so after losing him, and of course I wasn't doing it because I knew the science as a 6-year-old, I just did it innately. P.S. I knew I was onto something when I was a teenager and when I couldn't actually hold it together sometimes. And there were times when I made it worse. I made his blood pressure go up, not down. And that was scary. But after losing him, I became obsessed with either finding or writing the science behind this, because I knew that there was something magical in conversation that could actually help us de-stress and help us have better conversations. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Quick aside, why over coffee? Like I said, I've owned a coffee company for a decade. Cafe Unimatic is the name of it, and its purpose is to keep families together at the table. We're Italian, so as you can tell, a very Italian values type thing. But if you could just linger for a little bit longer, ask one more question, tell one more story, that's the stuff that you're going to remember 10, 20, 30 years from now, not the ding on your phone that made you run away, right? And Brave evolved out of our need to learn how to create a safe space at that table, really a space that feels safe enough for everyone sitting around it to show up as their full selves, to say what's true, to get curious about the things they don't understand or don't agree with, to learn to listen in a way that really creates unity rather than polarity and bifurcation and separation. We have that in spades. We don't need more, and we certainly don't need it around our tables, whether they be boardroom tables or dining room tables. So enough about me. I want to invite you to close your eyes for just 1 second, if that's comfortable for you. It'll just be a second. I want to ask you to call to mind someone that you really, really care about, someone that you adore so much. And now, if that person was going through something hard, what would you wish for them? And when you open your eyes, just pop it into the chat. I want to know what you would wish for them if they were going through something hard. Peace. To feel secure. I love it. Happiness. What else we got? All the tools they need to grow. My mom to feel included and loved. Peace and comfort. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that you guys are saying to make someone feel supported, right? To make someone feel that they have the tools, that they have peace, that they're included, that they're loved. So when we think about, I get a lot of, someone to turn to, which is really beautiful. And it's also really smart, actually. I'll tell you why. Research says that lack of social support is actually twice as accurate at predicting the long-term effects of PTSD than the severity of the trauma itself. So what does that mean in layman's terms? Not having a community, not having the support of other humans is worse than a potential trauma. Like not having that can actually make a hard thing that you go through last longer, even if it's not as intense as it could be, right? So what does that mean? We need each other so much. I mean, I think I speak for all of us when I say that this is imperative, when we're realizing it even more now. There's actually something called, a genre of medicine called narrative medicine. It basically says that sharing your story is what starts the process of getting through something hard. It's the beginning of resilience and our healing. So for people to share, we need other people to be able to listen. And unfortunately, the way we listen actually shuts people down sometimes, even though we have the best of intentions. We're kind of bad at it. And let me tell you why. So the best communicators are the people that can hear what's not being said, right? You've all had like that mentor or that person, you walk in a room and they're like, what's up? Just by the way you've said hello. And you're like, how did you know that, right? They can hear what you're not saying. And when you think about it, and we're all great communicators when we're not stressed. But when you're in an environment of constant change, never-ending demands, whether that pertains to work or families or little kids, you're in stress almost all the time, right? And when we're stressed, what's not happening? There's actually a part of our brain that makes us go into hyperdrive, makes us go, go, go. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. And its job is to protect us from danger. But the problem is that what happens when we're using that part of our brain is that other parts shut down. Those other parts are in charge of things like connection, creativity, problem solving, all the things you need to do well in life, at work, at home. All those parts go offline. So when your brain is protecting you from danger, you don't hear other people. You're not able to listen. You think you're listening, but you really are just trying to slow down for long enough to get everything done, to make everything okay, right? And amongst that are then those voices that are like, was this okay? Am I good enough? Did that person see my effort? How much more is on your plate because so much is happening at once? Should I have done this way? How things should have been, right? You're not able to hear what's really being said. But then you're definitely not able to hear the things that people aren't saying, right? You're not able to have that spidey sense of, hey, something's going on with you. You're different. Are you okay? Right? You're not able to do that because you're in it yourself. And if it's happening to you, it's happening to others. And that's when teams or families break down, right? When we're so in our own internal noise and we can't get out of it. So I don't think it's unfair to say that right now we're living through a particularly hard time in the world to tell the truth, right? Just to say what's true, to say what we feel. We're so polarized over so many things. It's like this constant barrage of good versus bad, right versus wrong. If you're not with us, you're against us, right? I literally hear, I think it's Beauty and the Beast. Every time I say that, I literally hear a Beauty and the Beast movie. But we judge people so readily because we want to defend what we believe, right? We want to be the good guys. And beyond making family gatherings particularly difficult, actually, do me a favor, close your eyes for one more second and think about a conversation that you're avoiding, that you know you want to have, that you know you need to have, but you're actively avoiding. Now, keep your eyes closed. When you don't have that conversation, what happens to the way you interact with that person? Ooh, you shut down, right? You get a little more judgmental. Maybe they become a little more frustrating more quickly. You're less tolerant. You're less patient. Now, what happens to your motivation and your drive? Are you creating things with all this energy and intensity and passion? No, you kind of lose it. Like you lose your mojo a little bit. What happens to your demeanor? Are you happy-go-lucky? Are you optimistic? No, you're kind of grumbly and salty, right? It's like, ugh, I'm Scrooge, right? What happens to your creativity? Are you having these amazing ideas? Are you in flow? No, you're kind of in a box, right? We stop giving our best. I mean, I've even had people say that their posture will physically change. They'll get smaller, right? They'll retract, they'll get smaller. They don't interact with the world as themselves because they're holding this thing back and it's caging them. And so my proposition to you today is that conversation is a tool that is so basic and so foundational, we forget that we can use it to create change. So what if every single conversation we had could be fueling the person we want to be, the kinds of relationships that we want to have, and the culture that we want around us? So the problem is, if we knew how to do that, we'd be doing it by now. And we really do. We have the best of intentions. We think we're doing the right thing, But at the end of the day, for example, did you know that you can change someone's brain state by the way that you listen to them? Like, you can put them in stress by the way that you listen to them, or just by the way that you look at them. You can look at someone and send them into a state of stress just by your eyes. Why don't we learn that in grade school? I don't know. Most of us are just so unaware of when and how and why we do this. So we're not bad people. This is just no one ever taught us this. So this is how people say the communication works. They say that, okay, so there's a source. Person A has a thought. Person A wants to communicate that thought. What do they want to say? They want to figure out the message. So they figure out what they want to say. They craft their message. They figure out their channel, their means of delivery, how they're going to say it, their tone, and then if it's by Slack, email, text, video chat, carrier pigeon. And hopefully the receiver, person B, receives the message and the outcome is understanding, right? That's usually how we think about communication. Now, if that was true, all we need to do is tweak those external factors, right? Get the message right, get the channel right, and then we're golden. We'll get understanding on this side. But how often does that actually happen? How often do you actually get your desired outcome, even though you really thought about, you said it perfectly and you delivered it so well, right? And yet our sentiments fall flat. It's almost like something is blocking the message from reaching the receiver without like scrambling in the middle. It's like lost in translation, right? So let me explain how communication actually works, because it's not about what you say or how you say it. Communication is about what you hear. It's not about the external stuff. It's about the internal stuff. So person A has a thought that they want to convey, right? So they craft that message, they choose that channel. But what we need to start talking about is that there's a wall of internal noise that exists before you get to that receiver. That internal static comes from the receiver's fears, beliefs, patterns, survival patterns, societal, cultural norms. It comes from every experience we ever had. Maybe it's not even theirs. Maybe it comes from their family's beliefs, right? It never makes its way into our conscious awareness. And it's technically silent, but it's so loud, it's deafening, right? It's the things that make our body and our nervous system tighten up around someone. We're not really aware of words. If we don't feel good, right? We know we don't feel good. So most often this internal noise is what distorts the message. So this is where Brave comes in. So what we need to figure out is a way to quiet. So if you think about message, channel, person B, right? Person A, person B. When person B's internal noise gets in the way, they don't understand. And then they look at you like, huh? What are you talking about? That triggers your internal noise. The way they just looked at you sent you into your own, oh my God, they don't understand. I'm not good enough. This is no, and then what's happening? We're ping-ponging our internal stories back and forth, and we don't stand a chance. But no one talks about this. They're like, get the message right, get the channel right. Say it's not about what you say, it's how you say it. No, you can say it with the perfect tone, and it still falls on deaf ears because that person's experienced some stuff that you don't understand, and that's okay. And what we can't control is other people. What we can control is ourselves. So this is where Brave comes in. So there's a framework that helps us identify or become aware of our own internal noise and gives us a protocol to quiet it so that you can really hear what's being said and so that you can begin to hear what isn't being said. So the goal is to quiet our own internal noise and then be able to feel into and quiet other people's internal noise. And it feels a little bit like magic. So I will explain what Brave is, but let me give you a sense of what it is. So do you all have an experience or like a conversation that you left and you left unfulfilled or hurt or angry or just downright icky? Do you all have that? I can explain it to you, but I'd rather have you feel it first. So do you all have a conversation that like just didn't make you feel good, that you left not feeling good? Yeah? Adriana, yes? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for just a second. We're going to see if you can step back into that conversation, kind of like it was a movie. So call to mind that conversation. Where were you sitting? Where were you standing? What was it about? How did you feel? How did that person look at you? How did you look at them? And now I just want you to ask yourself these questions based on just a couple of questions that I'll ask you. So what would this conversation have been like? How would it have been different if I approached this conversation without trying to fix or change that person? If I really just approached this conversation in a way that I just wanted to be present with that person. If I didn't come in with my own agenda or to be the hero or to be right, how would that have changed the way that I approached it? And then how would the conversation have been different if I came to the conversation with the intention to build trust, to build rapport through this conversation? Maybe it was a challenge, but what if every challenge was an opportunity to build a deeper bond? What if I used this conversation as an opportunity to build a deeper bond? How would I have shown up differently? And then how would this conversation have been different if I really actively listened to the person? If I turned toward them, if I looked in their eyes, would I have seen some things that they weren't saying, but that they were saying? Those things those unsaid things, would I have been able to recover that spidey sense that I have? And then how would this conversation have been different if I was able to recognize vulnerability, knowing that vulnerability isn't just sadness. Vulnerability is frustration. Vulnerability is shutdown. Vulnerability is being defensive, right? Those are emotions. Vulnerability is just the sharing of an emotion. So what if I was able to meet the other person's vulnerability, their anger, their defensiveness, their frustration, with curiosity, with empathy, rather than my own defensiveness, my own frustration, my own anger, right? What if when I met their vulnerability, it was with empathy rather than I was able to get curious? All right, so you can open your eyes. Did that feel different? Did you feel like, wow, that conversation would be radically different if I were to have approached it this different way? Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let me just walk through Brave really quickly. I want to be mindful of your time. We don't have too much time left. I can also send you a handout for this that has questions. So don't worry about writing anything down. The B stands for be present, because what we usually do in conversation is dive in and try and fix someone. We give them advice immediately. We want to take away their pain. But the research says that the best thing we can do for someone is say something more along the lines of, oh, wow, that sounds tough. You've got this. What do you think the next step is? What do you think you should do? I've got your back, but what do you think? Right? So we're empowering them to rise in resilience. We're just a witness. We're not fixing it for them. They don't need us to fix it for them, right? They're totally capable, and we're restating that to them. We don't do that. I still have trouble doing that. The next step is R. The R stands for rapport. So it's a fancy way of saying trust. We're bonding mammals. I mean, in hostage negotiation, you're not allowed to request behavioral change. You're not allowed to ask for anything until you build a bond, until you build rapport. That's how important it is. It is the reason we're here. It is the most important thing we have, but we don't actually spend that much time building trust. We enter into conversations trying to be right and assert our rightness, right? The next one is active listening. So the A stands for active listening, and active listening is not just being quiet, waiting for your turn to talk. It's kind of what we do, right? We're creating, like we're already forming our own remarks in our head, which is not listening, that is thinking. They are different, right? Being quiet doesn't mean we're listening. Being quiet just means we're not talking. Active listening means that you're listening with all of you. You're turning toward the person. You're looking in their eyes. Like you can listen with your eyebrows. And if you try it, the other person might feel more heard than if you're staring at a screen or looking somewhere else or not locked in with them, right? There's I would say the father of communication. He said that words are 7% of the conversation, tone is 38%, and face and body language is 55%. So face and body language is more than half of conversation. And yet we text and Slack and we think things are going to be okay. No, they're not. So when you actively listen, you'll start to uncover vulnerability that you've never seen before. And that's where the magic is. So when you are looking at someone and you see something happen, you see an emotion fly across their face, stop. Ask them what just happened, right? That vulnerability shows itself. We just aren't trained to see it, but we can see it. That face to brain connection, it's called the social engagement system. We pick up what's happening on people's faces faster than almost anything else in our body. So vulnerability is the V. So if I told you that vulnerability is always present in every conversation you have, you just don't see it, you'd probably look at me funny. But when I tell you that vulnerability is anger, it's defensiveness, it's frustration, it's when someone else shuts down, you don't think of it as vulnerability because that feels like it's a cutoff, right? But it's actually an invitation to ask, hey, something just happened for you. If something that I said made you feel that you needed to protect yourself, I didn't mean that. What's going on, right? It's an invitation for you to ask more questions and get curious, not tell them what to do, but just get out of your own way and get curious. So what we practice in Brave Conversations is when someone shares something vulnerable, our only job is step into empathy, which is the E. So empathy is inclusion. Empathy is accepting someone else's why, not because you agree with it, because you don't need to, just because it is, just because it exists. So it's people talk about it as non-judgment. Unless you're Buddha, I haven't found a state of non-judgment. So if you have, email me after class because I would like to learn from you. The reality is we're going to judge, but our practice is to put our judgment on the shelf. We'll come back to this and we'll deal with it later, because in this conversation, I want to stay here with you. Right. And what people want, what our brains want to feel safe, is just to be seen. And when you're getting in your own stuff, you're not able to see the other person. You're putting the mirror back on you. Right. So that is a very quick expression of the Brave framework. I hope you actually felt it when you closed your eyes and walked through that conversation. I like when you can feel it. It feels like it changes you most when you start to feel it. I know that was a lot. We'll send you an email. We'll send you a handout with all of that too. The thing I want to leave you with is that these Brave Conversations were created to be that missing piece of the puzzle for us, that roadmap that helps us release the things that are holding us back so that we can become the kinds of leaders, parents, partners, humans, building the companies, the communities, the families, the legacies that'll shape our world and our future. And I know that sounds really big and lofty, but everything huge and global and widespread starts in the hearts and minds of individuals. So please remember that we have the capacity to change anything or everything if we want to. So, Bobbi, back to you.
Wow, I feel transformed. That was amazing. I learned so much there.
That was fast.
It was brilliant. I really feel changed just from that conversation. Thank you so much. So anyway, I'm so grateful to both of you for sharing your knowledge, and take it with you in the world. I'll be posting on Chi Universe. Cafe Unimatic will be posting. The Wise Consumer will be posting. We'll make sure to put up this link and to get you any information. And just to leave you with this, I just want to say, my passion in the world is to create greater wellness for kids and families. And I just want to let everybody know that I'm doing this special $25 kids yoga mats and games on Amazon and my website, chiuniverse.com. So if you do have any young children that you love or any families that you love, please take a look, because we're having sales and it's the perfect healthy holiday gift. And to help us, spread wellness, feel the wellness. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody has acquired new knowledge that transforms you. And happy holidays. Thank you. Thank you so much, girls.
Hi, thank you. Bye, guys, ladies.
Thank you.
Have a great day, ladies.
Have a great day. Thanks.